starting right now. It's them,
Yeah.
episode 5.
Woo!
Here we go.
Episode 5 of them. So this
So,
time, we're actually on the right episode.
yes, thank you, Emma. We last time I already watched episode 5, thinking that's what we were doing, but very stupidly, I was wrong.
There we go. But it's good you're extra prepared for today. You've watched
it
this
twice
episode
now.
probably way too many times.
Which is the I'll just say before, I don't want to spoil it too much, but it is probably the worst episode of the entire series, and how horrible
Horrific
it is. Yeah, and so I would also like to start this podcast by talking about my lovely friend Dave. He is probably our number one fan now. He has watched
Hey, Dave.
Hey Dave! He's watched almost every episode that we've made so far. And I asked him, I'm like, oh, hey, yeah, if you have any, if you let me know if you find any parts, like going on too long, I'd love to hear any critiques you have. And so he sent me a message saying, he's like, yeah, the Them series is kind of hard to listen to sometimes because it's just an hour of you describing really violent scenes, and it's super depressing. All the stuff you're talking about. So in that vein, Dave, I present to you the most depressing episode yet, and this will definitely be.
This is the Them series is a very I feel like it's a very special type of series where it's not happy at all. The next one that we do for Casual Creeps needs to be more casual. This
We really didn't instill the casual into the Casual Creeps. It's very intense creeps.
Let's watch. We need to watch Teen Witch next. I keep trying to get you to talk about Teen Witch because it's so stupid.
Yeah. We need to really lighten up the mood with Casual Creeps, because people go in thinking it's going to be something different, but it's way worse.
I'm impressed that David's been listening to our Casual Creeps, because I don't think we have very many people listening to these ones. It's usually the actual full-on movie episodes, but
people know those better, I guess. That's for when we become huge and people go back to
and people want
catalog.
The more weird. They want the obscure stuff,
It's Raws before they got big and full of themselves and got drug habits.
Oh my god, the drug habits.
Ended up crashing their cars into people's houses.
Yeah, hope that never happens.
That's the
that is our beautiful future. Yeah, before we get into it, obviously all of these episodes, I should probably say this before each one, but they're all spoiler territory because we are literally just giving you a rundown of each episode. So yeah, if you want to watch it and come back, feel free, or maybe listen to it before you watch it, because this one is going to be a rough one to digest. So it starts out. Oh, don't even. Just that. That's no. Once we get there, you'll understand why disturbing. Why that is just the worst. Anyways, we start out in more or less present day. I think it's a little bit before.
Yes, right before the Emerys move in. Well, it's before the Emerys move in, and they're just getting ready to sign their paperwork, and you find out why the racist cop is slightly less racist than the other racist cops.
You do. You eventually find that out, but first.
Before the boardroom.
Before it's the boardroom of all
banking
the realtors, banking people that are all in charge of selling houses to communities in California, and they're talking about East and West Compton.
Bunch of rich assholes that are talking about how they're going to get richer by fucking over poor African American families, and how the more that the communities fail, the more money they'll make, because the mortgages and the interest rates are so high that they are essentially guaranteeing their success.
Absolutely insane. It starts out, it's a bit of a history lesson, I guess, with the way that they show the map. And if you've seen the intro of the first episode, you'll see that it shows a map of
Yeah.
California and Compton and all the communities that are turning red, and you see the red line. And we briefly discussed what that means in the first episode. But there's a little map, and it says on there that the green areas are the best places to live. The yellow areas, or no, sorry, the blue areas are still desirable. The yellow areas are declining, and the red areas are, in quotations, hazardous. Because
Oh.
in reality, they aren't hazardous, but they're just describing them that way because they contain certain ethnic minorities.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
It's disgusting. Yeah. And there's a line that one guy says, and I wrote it down because it is so horrific. It's like one of the first things one of the male realtors says. He said, a few years back, West Compton, green as can be, not a colored person, Mexican person, Japanese person to be seen. And now it's gone full red. And so that just describes perfectly what they're concerned about in the neighborhoods. Like, apparently, that's making them undesirable to live in. And you do see the female realtor that was who sold the house to the Emorys and to the Johnsons. She tries to speak up and tries to explain that actually, when colored people move into these neighborhoods, they're actually increasing the market value. But she gets cut off immediately by some super sexist
Don't forget
comments
about
about
that.
how she shouldn't be giving into her weak female nature or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter what she says if it goes against what the main dude thinks.
Yeah.
She's basically just a stupid woman that should be at home looking after children.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they have a very like poignant thing about talking about how it's like, oh, you chose the life you have, and that's why you don't have kids, and like they look down on her because she's not like a housewife. Just
and to get into the to get back into the interest rates, they're charging double what they bought the houses for initially, and then on top of that, because a lot of them can't afford to just pay outright, they will give them some sort of a loan, but the loan is over 20% interest.
That's crazy.
But
That's
only
almost like
for
loan sharking.
but it's only for people in minorities. It's not for white families. It's just the red zones. And the female realtor was trying to get them to offer competitive interest rates. But of course,
like, oh, you're a stupid
the other guy
woman.
is like, what the fuck? Yeah.
How dare you, silly lady?
How dare you? Yeah. And so that's the first scene there, and then we kind of get a bit of background on the Johnson family when they first moved in, because they were supposed to be the first family that moved into East Compton, right? So the first colored family, and you see
they're the ones that went insane.
Yeah, and you see like the female realtor is kind of going against her morals, trying to convince these people to, just you'll be one of the first colored people in the neighborhood, and that's great because that's where the future is going, and she's trying to paint it as like this positive thing.
Yeah, you're
but
not gonna get.
She knows that she's fucking them over.
Attacked. Yeah, it's fine. And not to mention they're signing their like financial death warrant.
Yeah,
because they're gonna be stuck in that house forever. Because
they can't leave.
They can't sell it.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, that's something else that like a white family won't buy it from a black family.
Exactly.
And
what happens
so high
is what one of the guys said. I couldn't fully unpack it because it all happened so quickly. I was writing everything down like, oh my god, there's so much. One guy, he was basically saying each time they sell to a colored family and they can't
make more money,
pay it off.
They default. If they default, they make money. If they pay it, they make money because they're charging them so much. But if they're
charging them so much, so it's even in their benefit. It's in their benefit if they leave Exactly. If they leave, and
It's
so is
free
that what
money.
happens when someone defaults on their
Yeah,
mortgage? They basically have to
they
leave?
take it back. Like the
Oh,
bank
okay.
will
Yeah.
they'll take back your house, kick those people out, and then
Yeah.
resell it. And they
For
literally
more
haven't
money.
done they haven't done anything. They haven't had to do anything.
A
They can
thing.
just sell
Yeah.
the house again to another ethnic family that is still going to get fucked over, and then
Yeah.
they can do it again. So the more that you default, the better, because they're at least putting a lump sum down. So those lump
Exactly.
sums are like, if you have like 500 people moving in and have a lump sum of like $5,000 back in the 50s, that's a crap load of money.
Yep. Yeah, and he's saying
And it's,
each time that happens, they keep jacking up the price each time, so it just
yeah,
keeps increasing, increasing.
yeah.
Yeah. It's like our current house market.
Oh, but it's
Eh,
Canada. Vancouver is horrible. I could say that for the housing
uh-huh. Yep. When
market.
people complain about the housing market here, I'm like, let me tell you about how much a shitty one-bedroom apartment downtown Vancouver costs, because it is
uh,
over $1 million.
Yeah. Well, like, yeah, my boss was talking about. He's like, "Oh, I found a house that was under $1 million." I was like, "Oh, what a steal! Under a
What?
million dollars."
Did he have to move 3 hours out of the city?
Oh no, yeah, because it was on Bowen Island.
That's why. That's not Vancouver.
Yeah, it's not Vancouver.
Bowen Island's lovely though, but yeah.
It is delightful, but it also is very far away.
Far and secluded, yeah.
Yep. But yeah,
So yeah.
so we then go on from really racist bankers and politicians to really racist police officer in the diner with poor lady who then gets more abused by a man.
Yeah, it's the same woman, it's the female realtor.
Yeah.
And you find out that there's been a bit of a sketchy situation going on under or behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there's some money being exchanged from the female realtor because she's been flipping houses, and the sergeant is in on it.
Well,
And
he
she's
essentially is
trying.
keeping the peace.
He's keeping the peace between the white and black families, so to speak. He's not doing a great job,
He's
but
not really keeping the peace very well. He lets them do a lot of shit to them.
he does.
But again, it doesn't
Um,
matter because they want them to leave at the same time because they can just bring in new people.
yeah, because she's trying to make it so that these families will stick around, but it's not going that way, and
Yeah,
she
she's actually
clearly doesn't want to be there. She wants to get out of this, but this
she's a
sergeant is
kind-hearted
basically.
person. She's actually a
She
nice
seems
person.
she seems like she has a
She
good
could
heart,
be.
but she's stuck in an impossible situation where she's either this or she's going to jail, and this sergeant is blackmailing her now because, well, he could be theoretically, he would be if she tries to get out of it, because he's like, well, you're the one who has their name on the
Yeah,
contracts that you're giving to these families. You're
yeah,
paying me in cash, so I'm invisible. No one knows I'm involved. You've got no proof. I
yeah,
know exactly what you're doing, and if you try to get out of this early, I'm gonna stick you in jail, basically.
yeah. Not a great
So
position to
she's
be in with a
fucked.
crooked cop.
And it's clearly that her superiors knew this and kept their names off of the contracts so that they wouldn't get in trouble, and it's just
She's the
all on
fall
her.
person. Yeah, yeah. They
She's
were
the
smart enough.
scapegoat. Yeah.
Yep, yep. The scapegoat.
The scapegoat.
Yeah.
Escape out of there, goat.
Goat can't escape. It's scapegoat.
It's
It's
not an
goat.
scapegoat, it's a scapegoat.
Scapegoat, not a scapegoat. Oh,
Stupid.
scapegoat can't escape. Scapegoat. That's how it works.
Anyways, uh
We then
yeah, oh yeah, and then we cut
go to the
to
Amityville red
we do
circle.
almost not quite. There's one quick scene
Oh,
before
there's
that.
still
It's
one
not
more scene.
not that important. Well, maybe it's a little. I don't know yet. But when the female realtor gets back into her vehicle to drive away, there's someone in her back seat.
Oh, yes. No, that is important because that
Okay.
guy says a disgusting line about how when white men are raping people, they take their time. That
Ew.
yeah. So that's the scene, and which unfortunately has a carry through to the next part of the episode.
Hooray! But yeah, this dude in the back seat.
Yay! Rape a bridge scene.
But he basically is just
Threatens
threatening
her.
her in the back seat of her car to stop selling houses to
Yeah.
colored people, basically. So she's
Yes.
stuck in the middle of the worst situation where it's just like, you need to sell to these people for your job, and you also are
Yeah.
stuck in an illegal situation,
Stuck
and then
in
there's
the
people that
middle
are
with
threatening
you.
your life to stop doing what you have to do for your job, and it's also completely immoral. So at that point, basically, the only way for her to escape is to blow up her whole life and go to jail and then start afresh. But
Yeah.
it's hard. It's not something people want to do. It's to blow up
That's a
their own
real
life.
rock and a hard place for sure. It's like go to jail, get murdered by a white racist.
Yeah. So now we get into the worst part of all, when we go
Just when
and
you
we're
thought all of what we were talking about was the worst part, it's about to get so much worse. This is the episode, I'll just say, is the reason why I was going to show you the show. Because like when I watched this episode, I was like, this is one of the most traumatic things I've ever seen. I'm like, this is so horrible, and it has stuck with me to this day because it is just like so awful. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen in film, and
I
so
will
I wanted
say,
to share it with you and to be like, hey Emma, you know what, we're gonna watch this as our first casual creeps because I can't wait for you to watch this so you can be as traumatized as me. I feel I'm just like trying to spread out my like trauma to people, and that's why
you're
I'm doing
trying
this.
to share the trauma. How
Yeah, I
nice
don't want
of
to be
you.
alone in watching something so horrific.
So it's funny because I recently went on a road trip across Canada, and when I got back, my friend who was with me stayed here for a few days, and I had mentioned I needed to see the next episode of them. And I went through each episode. I gave her like a rundown, so we were like prepared to watch this episode. This was the first episode she's seen of the whole series. She jumped in straight onto this one, and she's like, well, it's good, but it's super intense. And then I showed her the first episode after, so she could get a better idea of like what it's like leading up to it.
Intense. Yeah, that's.
It got her interested though. She
I
she
can't
wanted to
believe
see
she was
what else happened.
good for her for being willing to watch another episode after being that as the first episode. Good for
Okay,
her.
so
Yeah. I'm glad. Okay, well there you go. See,
oh,
it's very well made. It's classy. It's a classy production.
it is produced very well, and the
Yes.
music, I think the way that they juxtapose the music, it helps a little bit. Like it
Mhm.
makes it worse, but it also makes it better.
Well, yeah. If it was just complete silence, it would be.
Oh my god, I
I
don't
wouldn't
think I
watch
could
it.
do it. If it
Yeah,
wasn't produced in such a classy
yeah.
way where it was
Artistic
like it's
styling.
artistic.
So it can remove you
Yeah.
enough from it so you always know that you're watching a production. So it isn't that raw realness where you feel that you're watching it actually happen. Where if there is no music and no stylization, it's like, oh, this is, I don't want to watch
Yeah.
this.
It's
Like, who the
not
fuck would
like
want to watch that?
there was a Western movie that I watched kind of recently, and it was the one starring Hubert Cumberbatch. Benedict
Hubert,
Cumberbatch.
Hubert.
Hubert Cumberbatch. I think of Hubert Cumberdale from from what's the
Hubert
from
Cumberbatch.
um oh no.
Wag the dog. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
Hubert Cumberbatch. That's from, oh my god.
Yeah, the Netflix
Um
one. I haven't seen it yet, but I know what you're talking about. The
there
dog, the
well,
tale
now
of
I've
the
just
dog, or Hubert
yes,
Cumberbatch.
the tail what the fuck?
Tale of the dog, starring Hubert Cumberbatch.
Thank you. Benedict Cumberbatch. Oh, Hubert Cumberdale. It's like
Hubert Cumberdale.
it's like a character from Salad Fingers.
What? It's like
Only
salad
very
fingers.
only very specific people will understand that reference. It was like
I have
an
to
animated,
crusty
you know, yes, you know,
with
Salad
my
Fingers.
fingers.
So
Oh, I
there's
know the
one
salad. What?
where he named
How?
one of his fingers Hubert Cumberdale, and I always mixed up Hubert Cumberdale with
Benedict.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Wow, that is, I think, probably the world's most random reason to confuse Benedict Cumberbatch's name is
Hubert
because you
Cumberdale.
watched Salad
Salad
Fingers.
Fingers.
Hubert Cumberdale.
Oh wow.
That's impressive that you remember that because
That took me. It was in there. It was in there. It just took a little bit. But
it was a
anyways,
journey we
so
went on together. Hubert
so the
Cumberbatch.
movie, Tale of a
Cumberdale.
Dog, or whatever that movie is. It's,
Who knows at this? I don't even know what's happening anymore. What's real?
so with that movie,
With Hubert Cumberbatch.
I feel like if I'm trying to get to my point now before we go even further into more tangents that don't make any sense, because this has a point.
There is a point somewhere buried.
That movie is beautifully shot. This Benedict Cumberbatch movie,
Yeah.
but it is super dry. Like the way it's shot, it is like very, like it's cinematic, but it is super long shots.
Yeah.
It can almost be very dull. Like it feels like
they hold for a long time.
Yeah, it feels like something you'd see out of a film, like a film student that was like very like arrogant in his skill set. It was just trying to like show how like dramatic and impressive his work is. So if this show was filmed like that, I think it would be really rough to watch. But because it's done almost, the film techniques are almost verging on campy. Like it can sometimes be a little cheesy, but because
it helps lighten
because
the horribly
the topic
oppressive mood.
is so real and raw and it's gruesome and racist. So having them like walk this fine line of it's still serious, but the way that it's shot is a little bit like helping to soften it, but it's not funny, you know, like it's in a good place.
It creates a surreal imagery.
Yeah, that's a good way.
It isn't funny. It's just like it's surreal. So you understand that this isn't a true story. You know, you don't have to like think about how, oh my god, this is actually happening to somebody. But you also have the understanding that, well, this isn't based off of nothing. It's just a specific story that isn't true. But these events definitely happen to people of the time of that race. And,
I only say that it's not comedic or funny because there are moments where it is clearly shot in a way where it's like set up punchline, like with the doorbell ring. It like kind of like cuts in the middle of a moment that kind of gives you that, where you would see that happen gives you levity that you would see happen in a comedy, but they put it into something like this. So it's kind of like, again, with juxtaposition, they like to do those.
And it's very clever. It makes it like, because it almost makes you like, almost like then think about why you're laughing at it, because it's like, oh well, it's better to laugh than to keep thinking about what's happening right now. And so it's very good at that. And then we might as well just get into what happens and how it has this wonderful Amityville horror shot with the red. And it's like that's the same shot from the opening of the show, by the way. They use a lot of repeated imagery from the first episode.
But it works because really what they're doing is they're resetting up the first scene of the series again, which is basically shot for shot. It's the same as the beginning, except now we see what happens.
Yes.
So we see, once again, we see Lucky feeding Chester and her in their old house down in the south.
Feeding him peaches which is a
Right.
repeated theme of how like peaches are ruined for everybody in the family, essentially, because well, then it happens later. We'll talk about that, but peaches is what she's ruined.
Okay. Peaches, yeah.
Peaches is
So
a common theme.
yeah, it's the same situation with the old creepy woman coming up to the house singing the racist song and
Mm-hmm.
demanding that Lucky gives her son Chester. And so
Yeah.
Lucky is running back into the house, um, and you can hear her and more people trying to like break in, and so she's grabbing Chester, hides Chester in the pantry in like a little basket as she's trying to hide herself away from
Yeah.
these people.
Yeah.
um yeah, and they break in, and there's three creepy
Men.
hick old deep south hick men rednecks
Yep.
coming
Yep.
in, and they grab Lucky, pin her down, and then this woman is kind of like searching around the
Yeah.
house for Chester. And it's like both of these things are happening at the same time, and while
Yeah.
this is happening there's like this cheerful kind of music that's playing, almost like it's supposed to be like it's a goofy funny scene that's happening, like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this is silly, but it's super horrific. We see uh the creepy woman has started to figure out where the baby is, and
Yeah.
meanwhile these
Uh,
two dudes have pinned Lucky down and have started raping her. It's super disgusting. She's
yep.
screaming. um
Bad
and then we
stuff.
see,
It's
I
the worst.
couldn't figure out what the hell this woman was trying to do with Chester. Like, she brings him out and she's like doing like a peekaboo
Yeah.
thing with
Yeah.
him. And then she says, "Cat in a bag, cat in a bag." And then she keeps
Oh.
repeating this. The music gets louder. This cheerful music gets louder. She finds a pillowcase, puts Chester in this pillowcase, and
Uh,
then starts swinging it and starts tossing it back and forth between the other men. And it's just this intercut with this cheerful music, with Lucky screaming on the ground, with like just all of these
it's so
things happening at once,
uncomfortable.
and you're just sitting there with your jaw agape, like, what the fuck is happening right now? How did people even think to do that?
I
What is
have no
this?
idea. Like, what the fuck is the term
Who
cat in a
thought of this?
bag? Even the
Is that
person,
what?
like, do you put a cat in a bag? Like, that's still
Yeah,
horrible in and of itself. Let alone
is
putting a
that?
baby in a
It's
bag.
like, I need to research that term. Like, what does that initially mean? Or is that just like her own fucked up mind is
Yeah,
just like, oh, cat in
I
a
have a
bag?
feeling it's based off something, but I'm too afraid to look it up because I don't want to. It'll just make me really sad. Because
Oh my god.
the only idea I can come up with is that people just put cats in bags and beat them on the ground like they did that poor child. So
I,
yeah, that was the worst part. I will never forget that. That is why I remember the show, is because of that moment. It is so like impactful that you will not forget that ever. That will stick with you.
yes. Okay. I looked it up while you were talking because I needed to know.
Oh, oh, good.
Um,
What terrible thing does it mean?
so there's I'm looking at the general one right now, and it just says, uh, where did it go? Oh, wait. It just says a ruse, swindle, or suspicious transaction. Cat in a bag.
Okay.
Putting the cat in the bag. And then,
Hmm.
okay. Well, I'll let you continue in on the story because I'm looking up the racist meaning now.
Oh, good. All right. So, yeah, after that delightful exchange where their baby gets murdered and they walk off scot free, they never get taken to justice. Nothing happens with that, and then they have a funeral with their friends and family, and the kids are kind of afraid of the mom, and this is kind of where the idea that why the children are afraid of their mom is because of how she acted after Chester got murdered, which is pretty understandable. Why you would be distraught after that, and so at one point, the little girl cuts her peaches and gives them to her. It's like, "Hey, mom!" It's like, "Here's some peaches," and she just throws up in front of it at the idea
Oh,
of even eating
right.
a peach, and
Yeah.
so she then gets scared of her mom, and the mom starts like going, just like holding the bloody cloth of the bag that Chester was killed in, and she's just like insanely looking out into a field and clutching this bloody sack, and the two little girls are looking out the window, and it's like, they just tell each other, it's like, "We'll never be like mom, we'll never be like mom, we'll never be
Yeah,
like
it's
mom."
so sad.
And it's,
It
yeah,
is
so
so
it's,
sad.
yeah, because this poor woman deserves to grieve. Like, she had to, like, well, yeah, we don't need to go back into it, but she has a lot to deal with, a lot to unpack, and because of that, she gets ostracized from her own family, essentially, and then you find out that the dad gets a call to be able to like take his engineering job in
Yeah,
California, and that's kind of what sets up them deciding to move. And you
them
find
moving.
out that like them moving happened pretty quickly after the murder of Chester, and
Oh,
so she
immediately.
she isn't even over it, and that really adds a layer to everything that's happening because she's still trying to fucking grieve about like not just the death of her child, but also fucking the fact she got raped, and so they have to deal with that. Move to a new place, and now there's a bunch of more white assholes trying to mess with
Yep.
them, and
Yeah.
so it's like, oh, okay, I get it.
And to add to everything that happened in the South, when I was looking up the the racist term for cat in the bag, I couldn't find
Oh,
anything immediately, but I did see some people were tweeting about that episode of the show, and one person was saying how he's frustrated that people are saying scenes like this in this show are just like fictional, like they're
oh yeah,
things that are too horrific to have ever happened
oh, okay,
to
but
people in the South. But
I
he
believe
has
it would
heard
happen.
stories. He's heard stories of his ancestors and elders where worse things have happened to them. So it's things like
Yeah,
that have happened, and worse things have happened, and things like that continue to happen.
yeah,
So it's horrific for us to imagine because we are privileged enough to have never had to go through experiences like that, or our
yeah,
ancestors,
yeah.
like near
I
ancestors that
certainly
I know
believe
of,
it
anyways.
could happen. Yeah, yeah,
It's absolutely brutal. And then that gives me more insight into the scene after when they are at the funeral. Because when I initially watched it, I was like, do they not? Maybe they must not have told them everything that happened to Chester because they seem way too casual about this. But it's
oh
like
yeah,
they're probably so used to white people doing this shit that
yeah,
it's not that big of a shock because a lot of them are sitting around just smoking and kind of like
yeah.
joking
No,
around.
yeah. It's a commonplace thing, I think, for them. Like they understand, and they obviously sympathize, but they know that this is what white people do to them.
There's
Oh
a scene
boy.
um, I wrote down. Where is it? Yeah, so I'm not sure if she's a family member or a friend, but there's this other woman and Lucky are standing in the kitchen or something after the
Yeah.
funeral, and her friend is like, "The Lord hath given and the Lord hath
Oh
taken
yeah.
away,"
You find
and
out why
Lucky,
Lucky isn't a religious woman.
yeah, and Lucky's like slaps her in the face and is like, "When he comes for your boy." give my regards to your lord. Just like, yeah,
Yeah,
fuck you
yeah.
for saying that.
Oh,
Like, what the
Daniel, you
actual fuck?
ignorant asshole. Don't say that shit after a
Don't
child
say
is
that
dead.
immediately after someone loses their child, after someone loses anybody. Like, it's such a rude thing to say.
Yeah,
And
you know what?
ignorant.
That person is not going to see the grand design that the Lord has for them in that moment. Like, leave them
Good
alone.
lord.
Leave them alone. Just let them feel awful. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So, yes, pretty
all of
horrific.
that is terrible. And yeah, just yeah, they then that kind of is just about how awful that experience is and how they decide to move to California,
Hmm.
and you realize that they're just like embedding themselves, like the combination of the two, if you think about it, because the beginning scene kind of gets lost when you're watching the second half of the episode with Cat in a Bag. Like, that is what invades your mind and what will really stick with you. But the first half also very cleverly shows how they're actually going into such a terrible manufactured situation where white people are oppressing them, not so violently as they were in the South, but just as oppressive. And they're controlling them just the same through these like new laws of just sucking their money dry. So even if they're hardworking, they don't get the same benefits that like white Americans get. So they're never going to be able to achieve the same as most white Americans unless they work super, super hard. And so it's like putting them at a disadvantage right away. And so it's like, okay, well, it's like you're not going to get murdered here. Well, maybe you will. But
Yeah.
we'll just drain you instead. And so we'll keep you alive, but you're just going to be feeding the government money instead.
You're only there to benefit the system. You're there to
Yeah.
benefit the white people that live there.
They
And if you're not
allow
doing
them to
that,
come.
yeah, if you're not doing that, then they're going to find other ways to fuck you over, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. They'll,
That's what it
get their
seems
pound
like.
of flesh one way or another.
Yeah. So it's different tactics in the States, but it's definitely still happening. So yeah, that was that episode. And when we end the episode while they're still in their old house, and Henry is trying to convince Lucky to get in the car. They've got their daughters in there waiting for them, and she's just looking at the case that Chester's box that has his stuff in it still. And Henry
Yeah.
is like, it doesn't matter where we go, he'll always be with us. And Lucky agrees, he'll always be
Mm-hmm.
with us. But that's
Yeah.
how it ends. Just
Yeah.
ominous on this box of Chester's things, and cuts to black.
Yeah,
Yep,
that's a
that's it.
fun episode. So yeah, there's not much to
Real
say.
dark.
It's a very
Sorry, Dave.
visual episode. Yeah, sorry, Dave. Dave is the most depressing one, but it's also our shortest episode because it's so
Because
depressing.
we
But
do want to linger. And
no,
honestly, the episode itself is only 30 minutes. It's not a long one, but it is a fucked one. So,
is that
yeah.
episode only 30 minutes?
31
Oh,
minutes.
that's really interesting. That's like quite a time change between
Because
other episodes that are like an hour long.
I noticed the
That
way
makes a
that this one was
lot of
shot.
sense.
This one is shot much more dreamlike. Apart from the beginning is more
Yeah,
structured. It's like
normal.
this
Yeah.
happens, that happens. But then after the shit goes down, um, it's very dreamlike because you see how it's you can imagine when you're that traumatized, that fucked up,
Oh, you would
everything is
leave your body.
blurring together. She's
Yeah.
losing her sanity, just trying to understand and deal with the grief of being raped and
Yeah,
being
trying to escape the
having
moment,
your
essentially.
having your child be murdered in such a horrific way right in front of you
That's
while
a
everything
lot
is
to
happening.
unpack.
So it is shot very, very dreamlike, where shots are kind of melding together. There was a point where I actually just thought a shot was just straight up Lucky dreaming of herself like picking the lavender, but it was happening in
Oh,
reality. So I was like,
yeah.
this I don't know
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
what this is. what is happening, but I think it's really just showing how much they've all lost it there as a family and how much
It's
they
not a
needed to just
home.
escape.
Yeah.
They needed to leave. Like it would have been almost impossible to leave without trying to get over Chester, but I think it was probably one of the only ways they could have moved forward.
Yeah.
Like, how could you live in a place like that where everything like that happened, So,
yeah, that'd be
and you're not getting support
impossible.
from your family necessarily. They're just
Yeah,
kind of
or
like, this is just what happens.
yeah, and people just tell you it's like now you have to move on. It's like, oh, well, that's real easy to
Great.
do.
And if something
Cool.
like that happens in your house, why would you want to stay in case something worse
Everything would
happens?
remind you of it. Everything would remind you. Yeah, and you're still
Everything,
living in the house where that
and
happened,
it's
so that
still
it could
dangerous
still
because those
happen.
people are still
Come back.
around. They could
Yeah.
come back. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it definitely makes sense why they decide to leave. It's just yeah,
Yep.
yeah, it's very terrible. But that makes a lot of sense that it's very dreamlike because it's and why it's
Yes.
shorter just because it
Surreal.
has such
Yeah.
heavy content that you wouldn't really want to like create to like you just want that part of the story to be its own thing, and it's really clever that they decided to shorten it rather than tacking on like another part on the end of that to make it like an hour like most shows would do, where it's like
Yeah.
okay, well every episode has to follow the format of this amount of
I've
time,
noticed that
but
it's
they're good
nice with
about
this
allowing that.
it's nice with this series because every episode is a different length. So it's almost like um they
It's a
just
big
need they
movie.
have like a maybe a maximum that they
Yeah,
can't go over, but
yeah,
it's
I'm sure
like
they're not gonna make it like
anything.
2 hours,
Oh yeah, but
but yeah,
yeah,
they're very good
they're
at
doing
like
a good job.
they're thinking about the story over the format, which I
Yeah.
appreciate because it because I didn't even realize because watching that episode is like good, it's so heavy, it feels longer than it actually is because oh boy, like even this time when I watched it, I was like, okay, I've watched this before. I do not want to watch the whole thing again, so I skipped it.
Yeah.
I did like a 10-second skip where it was like
So you're
I
just
just
like, this happened, yep, this happened, yep, this
but like
happened.
every still frame is horrifying. It's like it's a horrible thing to watch, just the still frames of every 10 seconds because you're trying to skip through it, but you're seeing just another little snippet from every 10 seconds. And it you could and because I've seen it before, I perfectly understood what was happening. I was like, oh, this is almost worse.
It's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Yep, it's very emotionally charged. Everyone is at every point going through something terrible. So this is not a fun one to watch, but I think it's a
It's a
necessary one
short one.
to understand why everyone is so
Yeah. Traumatic,
traumatized.
traumatized,
Everyone's
and
traumatized.
just in case, because every other episode has been so lighthearted and fun and carefree. It's now you get to watch the really depressing episode.
Yay.
Oh yeah! I think that's the
So yeah,
perfect way to end it.
great. That's that was them, episode 5. We'll be back soon with
For a
another them.
fun-filled
We're
episode of them.
we're getting close. We're getting close to
We're
the end of
almost done peeling this band-aid, Dave.
almost
Don't
done.
worry. It'll be
And then we'll
lighter
get to
eventually.
something a little more fun, lighthearted.
We promise. We promise. It'll be more casual than a horrible, horrible oppressive
Yes.
racism.
All right. Until next time. See you guys later. Bye.
Bye.
All right, podcast's over.